And I wish someone talked to me about money. Like, I wish I understood like what it meant to build like a profitable business and that there was safety around money. And then how does my story, my mental health, my lived experience impact my thoughts around money, around business, around my relationships, and more, right? I'm Jasmine Lopez. I'm an accredited financial counselor. I'm a nonprofit founder. I am a social impact entrepreneur. I love using entrepreneurship as a way to make social change in my communities. And yeah, and so I do that through my for-profit business called Mentally Mutual, and I do that through my nonprofit called the Firehouse Dream. And they both center creative entrepreneurship, financial wellness, and mental well-being.
I love that. So I mean, you wear different hats throughout your days, I'm sure, then dealing with all these titles that you have.
Yes.
But when I was doing some research into your profile, and because we because I've seen some videos of you, and then we kind of connected more with through Adina's certification program. Shout out Adina, and it seems to me that you've had quite a journey with money, with mental health, and just healing in general. Can you share like what led you to start Mentally Mutual and what its mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mental health journey started around, I think, 2018, maybe more like 2017, when Trump was in his first administration.
Mm-hmm.
I had built a business a photography business, in fact, where I had
Oh,
like
okay.
fully tried to assimilate because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I was
Mm.
confronted with my own journey on Instagram saying that my brand looked nothing like me and was confronted with the question of what am I going to do about it? And that was the first sign for me that I needed to do some internal healing work. And
Like
so,
it was like a realization that you had then? Okay.
yeah, it was a realization that I had. So in entrepreneurship, depending on what spaces you're in, some spaces promote this idea of completely separating who you are,
Mm.
your cultural
Mm.
identity, all aspects of who you are, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought that's what I was supposed to do to find success. And so I separated myself into all these separate parts. I had like four different Instagrams trying to
Oh
do.
my gosh.
Yes, it was crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Trying to do it all. And then I was confronted with this realization that I have a brand, a business that looks nothing like me, uh,
Mm-hmm.
centered on what I believe and what I value. And my question was, what am I going to do about it? And so I think what I needed to do was really focus on my own healing first. And so I got into therapy.
Okay.
And therapy really helped me gain some language around how I was experiencing internalizing racism, assumptions around my cultural identity, around my story, around who I am, especially as someone who grew up low income, um,
Mm.
and also was experiencing a lot of financial insecurity in my adulthood as well. We had lost
Okay.
our home, experienced bankruptcy, and so there were these hidden parts of me in my story, especially around money, that I
Mm-hmm.
thought I needed to hide or reject or pretend didn't exist in order to experience success in my business. And so throughout my healing journey is when I began to gain some language around my story, what I experienced in my childhood and adulthood, and what I was experiencing currently in that moment through my business. And it was this aha moment. And so I
Oh, okay.
closed that business down and
Yeah.
I started a new photography business called Authentic Adventure at the time.
Okay.
That's also when I moved into the community that I was living in called Maywood. And I'd say that's the area, Maywood, Illinois, for those who aren't familiar. And it is in that community where I learned what it meant to be a good neighbor. Who
Hmm.
gets to decide narratives around what is a good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood? Because my experience living in my own community was so different than what the media and outside voices were saying to me about my own community. And so
Okay. So you moved into, so was there like a shared space with people of the same like community space or?
So it's a black and brown community, right? And so
Yeah.
we had moved into Maywood, and people from the outside, from more like affluent communities,
Mm-hmm.
were saying things like, isn't that like a ghetto community, or isn't it
Oh, okay, I
bad?
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it bad to live there? That's not language I use. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of engaging in curious conversations with me around like, oh, what's it like to be a homeowner? Or how are you
Yeah.
enjoying your new home and community? They would project their assumptions on me
Mm.
about what they had heard about my community. And then in turn would label it bad or, ghetto or different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what put me down the trajectory or pathway of doing what I do now. So I started doing research. How did my community become the way that it did? What is the systemic and institutional injustices and challenges my community has
Yeah.
faced that has impacted it to be what it is today? And then what can I do? What assets do I have and that I can
Mm.
give to my own community so that I can see the positive changes that I want to see? And it's what birthed this nonprofit idea of like, okay, well, when I first became a photographer, a creative, what
Yeah.
did I wish I had? I wish I had mentors who looked like me. I wish I had access to the tools and the equipment. And I wish someone talked to me about money. Like, I wish I understood like what it meant to build like a profitable business and that there
Yeah.
was safety around money. And then how does my story, my mental health, my lived experience impact my thoughts around money, around business, around my relationships, and more, right? And so
Yeah.
that's when this dream started to happen. So I actually started the Firehouse Dream, the nonprofit first. And the nonprofit, is so hyper local to Maywood that I realized the need to do a for profit arm where I could do my financial wellness programming beyond the Maywood community because the nonprofit is so focused on BIPOC youth in the Chicagoland area, and I wanted to make a more wider reach on an intergenerational kind of space and concept. Additionally,
Yeah.
just for some nuance, with nonprofits, no one owns it. It belongs to the community. It's a public charity. So
Right.
whenever I step down as the executive director, I no longer own I don't have its content, right? It has its own curriculum that we've designed, different things like that. So at the same time, I wanted to be able to create a separation between what is my IP or intellectual property versus what is the nonprofits. That way, when I'm no longer the executive director, I don't lose my own curriculum and intellectual property. So this is
Right. Like what you gave, like, like you put in your time and work and you want to, make sure that you also have that for your own personal, like a brand and what you want. So you have control of what you want to do, I'm sure.
exactly. So we have a licensing agreement
Oh,
where
okay.
the for profit gives access to the nonprofit to use the
Mm.
curriculum. That way, when I step down and succeed, right? Because no founder should ever really be in the nonprofit forever. Like there should
Yeah.
be sort of succession plan set in place. And I'm reaching that line soon if I'm honest, right?
That's
Like
awesome.
I've been
That's
doing this
awesome.
since 2017, dreaming it
Wow.
up and doing the work. It's been a long time. It's going to be time soon to pass it on to the next generation. So I want to make sure that I have my own set of protection set in place as well. So this is what inspired
Mm-hmm.
me starting Mentally Mutual and allowing me to really do the work that I want to do in the space of financial wellness that like intersects with mental well-being and
Yeah.
creativity as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a lot to unpack in that because you explained it so well and so many things at different points in your life. I want to take a step back to like the nonprofit though. You said it was the Firehouse Dream, I
Mhm.
believe. So yeah, you mentioned how that impacted your journey to creating Mentally Mutual. So how did you start that up? Like how were you? I want to know how you even came about that because were you a co-founder of it from my understanding or
Yes.
yeah, so I understand there was like a lot of frustration, maybe like, like community outside forces saying like, this and that and mainly frustration that you're like, I want to just um re like educate people on this, or some, or maybe help more people understand. I don't know, like what was your like motivation, and how did it lead to you even you just starting a nonprofit? Because like not every day that I know someone's just like, I'm just gonna step out of my house today and I feel like starting a nonprofit. Like
I actually had
is
no
that
desire to ever start a nonprofit.
right? Yeah.
I'm like, what did I get myself into? And now knowing what I know about
Yeah.
nonprofits, I'm like, man, I would do it all over again. But I'm
Yeah.
grateful for everything I've learned over the last 7, 8 years. But really, what inspired me was this idea of what does it mean to be a good neighbor, and what can I
Mm.
actively do to contribute to my own community,
Yeah.
which led me to saying, okay, well, what assets do I have? What can I use to be a positive change in my community?
Okay. Yeah.
And that's been creative entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And creativity, especially in like Latino and Black spaces, like we are taught like the starving artist narrative around that, right? Or
Yeah.
you can't create a viable income off of that, or that's a hobby. That's not something that you can actually create a career out of.
So, what do you mean by like creative entrepreneurship for people that might not be
Yeah.
too familiar with the term as well?
So anything where you can monetize creative skills, so photography,
Hmm.
graphic design, content creation, podcasting,
Yeah.
yeah, content creation. Yeah, I mean, the gamut is so broad. The creative economy is over 900. Well, actually, it's new data. It's like $1.1 trillion dollars, and it's estimated to continue to grow, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, but yet BIPOC individuals, we are not highly
Yeah.
represented in this space. We're very
Mm-hmm.
underrepresented, right? Our stories are not being told in authentic, genuine ways. They're filled with stereotypical uh, uh, understandings around. It doesn't consider our cultural nuanced lived experiences, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so there is space for us in the creative economy as Latinos to show up, to be in it, and to create our art, which
Mm.
have always used art as a form of resistance and liberation and joy. And so there's this, and it's a cultural practice of ours. So what does it
Yeah.
look like to connect or reconnect to our cultural practices of creativity and to use it for social change, for good within our own communities? And ultimately, that's
Mm.
what we're trying to do at the Firehouse Dream is gather BIPOC youth together to learn these skills. And it's okay, cool, good to monetize it. You can make money off
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
But how are we going to use these skills to create change in our communities? How
Oh,
will
I
we
love that.
amplify the
Yeah.
concerns of our communities? How will we amplify our stories? How will we center it? And so, right now, in the work we're doing, the three main concerns for our youth right now is mental health, it's safe communities or safe spaces, and it's racial healing. There is a
Mm.
deep desire for racial healing amongst our youth. And so that's where we're spending a lot of our time right now in creativity, using art, photography, poetic expression, dance.
Yeah, that's
That,
beautiful because like so I'm guessing you guys like provide like some of these resources, like someone wants to do photography, you're like, we have some cameras, go out and like take some pictures and tell us how this relates to your identity or something like
yes,
that.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Okay,
And it's,
yeah.
and it's not just some cameras. Like we got Sony to partner with us. They gave us
Oh my
the best.
God. Wow.
They gave
Oh
us the best
wow.
equipment to be able to document and for our youth to learn on.
Shout
And
out to
yes,
y'all. Where are you guys located? Or, if
so
someone's listening, they're like, you know what? That sounds amazing. Can anyone like in the community just like walk in here? Like,
yes, yes. So
okay.
we are in Maywood, Illinois. It's a small suburb just outside of Chicago. And we're open to the Proviso Chicagoland community.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful. I wish I would have had that growing up. I kind of like came into my creative outlet being just podcasting and doing like content online, just from a need of I want to share resources with my community, and then the creative outlet. I was like, how can I do this in a way that I can get it out there to people? And then I just kind of I never would have seen myself as being like creative, and I love the creative process so much just from being in it. Like I said, I never would have thought myself to be in it though, because growing up, I was just working, like, just doing like landscaping jobs, doing this and that. Sports, I grew up with sports, and I just never had the opportunity to like explore that side. And then you guys doing that is beautiful because like, you never know, right? You could be that some spark something in them that could lead to something beautiful.
Yes, yes, I love it. And that's exactly why we exist. And
Mm-hmm.
it's creativity has been so healing, right? Like it centers stories. It creates opportunity for us to find connection and
Mm.
belonging and healing together. And so it's why we do what we do and center creativity in it all. Because, like I said, there's just such beauty and opportunity to experience healing and joy and liberation together when we can experience creativity together, whether that's through
Yeah.
podcasting or
Yeah.
photography or over a meal. That's all creative expression.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I love that. Jasmine, I love your energy and just like everything you're saying, just as well as like mindset. How do you, because you mentioned you went through like a bankruptcy, right? A process through that. Um, how do you come back from that? Like, how did you experience, like, what did that teach you about like resilience and financial wellness and make you this positive, bubbly person that I'm on here with now?
Well, so we experienced our bankruptcy in 2010 during the mortgage crisis or the Great Recession. And I was in young 20s, newly married
Okay.
and had a baby. And
Oh
honestly,
my God, so much going on. Wow.
I honestly thought like my life was over. Like I had a
Ah,
quarter life crisis.
yeah, yeah,
I thought this bankruptcy was going to define my life
yeah,
forever. And that it
yeah.
was like, this is it. You made the wrong choice and there's no coming out of it.
Wow.
And for the first, it's been what, like 15 years now? The first half of that time, I thought it was because I didn't know how to budget or save. And so I started
Mm,
like taking financial literacy workshops. And then about year 7 or 8 into the journey, I was like, there's something deeper here. There is a disconnect between my brain and what I know, and I don't know how to reconnect or fix it. And so that's
yeah,
I got into therapy. That's when I
yeah.
had a financial coach. I got a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual director because my faith is a big part of my story as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And then I got into community with a group of girlfriends who were all on their own financial journeys.
Oh,
Just there,
interesting. Just like online or in
yeah,
local or
on
cool.
Facebook. Yeah, it started. It was like
Wow. Okay, yeah.
so there
Awesome.
was so there was like 8 or 10 of us. And over the years, we've been able to become debt free, buy houses, start
Wow.
businesses, pay off student loans. And so there's just so much power in healing when we do it communally, when we do it together,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, knowing that you're not like going through this struggle like alone, right? Like,
Yeah. So it's not until now, maybe a few years ago, where I was like, wow, like I'm finally seeing the other side of coming on the other side of my bankruptcy.
yeah.
This doesn't define me. This doesn't
Mm,
determine my worth or my value. It's just a part of my story. And now I share it openly, in a way that helps drive some connection with others who maybe are experiencing financial insecurity or instability, or they themselves have gone through
mm.
bankruptcy and are like, hey, like this is how you can rebuild. It's not impossible. There's still time and
Yes.
space to
I feel like
rebuild.
bankruptcy is such a scary word. Like, and, like everything that comes with it. But like that's why you're here. You're like it doesn't define you, it just
Exactly.
it doesn't mean that your life and like your business is over. It just means that you have to look at it maybe in a different way, reshape, restructure,
Exactly.
change that mindset and just keep going. Find community. Um, that was the big thing that you mentioned there. And you said that you had to redefine success after that period. So where you are now, then, I'll ask you like, what does success look like for you now? Versus like, because when you were back then, you're like, I'm done. Like this is over. I'm pretty sure you have a very different view of what success is now than it was back
Yes.
then.
Yes. Success is not determined by how much money I have or don't have, right? Because there's going
Yeah.
to be seasons where I have a lot and a little. And even from then to now, like we've had seasons where we've done financially really well, and then we've had
Mm-hmm.
seasons where we're still technically low income. And
Mm-hmm.
even in that, I've been able to experience a fully abundant life where I've gotten to, you know, through entrepreneurship, travel hack, be able to travel still, experience life in its beauty and all it
Yeah.
has to offer. We have time freedom. That's success, right? That's success for
Mm-hmm.
me. I grew up in a single parent Latina home, and she had to work multiple jobs in order to provide for us. And so I never got to see her. We never got to do dinners together, right? And so for me, success is that I get to be home with my kids. We get to
Oh,
homeschool. We get to travel.
yeah.
We get to have dinners together, right? And so it's all about
Oh.
what are your joys and your values. And if you can shape your life around your joys and your values, then to me, that's success.
Oh, I love that. Those are all such valuable things too. I'm very I don't have any kids, but like the piece with I mean that's just family in general, and changing your how maybe you didn't grow up in the best environment and then changing that environment for like your kids and valuing time. I'm so big on like oh my gosh, like please everyone like value your time. It's the biggest thing that you can do, your mental health as well, like take that time to like dedicate time to your needs because it's so important when it comes to your financial well-being. Like that's such a huge thing that I'm always advocating for. But you mentioned also growing up in like a single parent home. I want to kind of ask you what how did that influence your relationship with money, and you already kind of gave us a little bit of how that influenced like your success. But I'm curious how that influenced your relationship with money and maybe like even like self-worth.
Yeah. So growing up, money was not talked about. And I was a very curious kid. I always had a lot of questions, especially around money, but it wasn't something that was cultivated or fostered. And so by the age of 18, I became financially independent, trying to
Okay.
figure out adult life and made a lot of mistakes. And so I
Yeah.
operated out of scarcity. That is my biggest struggle still to this day. I have done so much healing work to work through my scarcity mindset. I also have another maladaptive mindset is called failure to succeed. So I
Mm,
learned through therapy that I have this due to the trauma I've experienced, like I have this mindset that everyone around me is meant to succeed but me. And I have had to
yeah.
do so much deep healing work around it. It's still sometimes there, a little thought in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But I have to sit and I have to do the breath work. I have to do the affirmations and the truths and say no, like I'm meant to succeed. I can succeed.
Mm,
Am I living out of my joys and my values? Am I
mm.
showing up? Am I being present with my family, my loved ones, and my community in the way that I desire? If all of that is a yes, then I'm succeeding, right? And
Period.
so I've had to do it did growing up, seeing financial struggle, seeing my mom go through everything she went through was really hard. It really impacted
Hmm.
me. And there's lots of other interconnection, deeper pieces to my story that has also impacted my sense of relationship to self, others, and money. But yeah, that healing work, that internal work is so important. And I think oftentimes, we grow up and we're like, I'm gonna just give the next generation, whether it's our children or our nephews and nieces, cousins, etc. I'm going to provide for them what I didn't get to have, but we don't do that
Mm.
internal healing work and
Yeah.
sometimes swing on the completely opposite pendulum swing, right?
Yeah.
For me, I had to learn in therapy. I'm so grateful for my therapist where she was like, Jasmine, like you have the capacity to do both. You can be the mom you need to be to heal for your children and to create generational
Oh.
change. And you can also do the internal work to heal little Jasmine.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Making me
And
emotional over here.
yeah, and so that's a truth I hold on to, right?
Yeah.
I had to learn how to reconnect with myself because I spent
Hmm.
so much of my life disassociating and separating from my sense of
Wow, that's a
self.
big one. The disassociating. I feel like it's something so relatable, like in like a Latino like household.
Yep.
That is, we go through so much that you just. I've experienced dissociation so much, so many different times. It's just like I just don't even want to be here right now when this is like happening.
Yeah.
And how did you come about therapy? Because that seems like to be a very big, um, huge impact that you mentioned like in your life. And it's such a thing that like a lot of people in our community, it's kind of like not. I think it's a little bit better now, but it's not talked about. Like, especially with like my parents and stuff. If you mention like therapy, like, what's wrong with you? Like,
Mhm.
well, a lot, but it's like that's why I need therapy. No, it's just it's just such a like a taboo. I feel like the older generation at least, and I think it's getting better now. But how did you like? Did you have that mindset too? Did you experience that, and how did you get around that? Where you're like, you know what? No, I just need to go and like do it.
Yeah, therapy for me was not something that I knew of or that people did until, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
honest, I started going to a new church.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not a Latino church, which is what
Mm-hmm.
I was used to. And they centered and talked a lot about mental health and therapy. I was like,
Oh,
wait, what is this?
yeah.
I joined a small group with some other mom entrepreneurs, and everyone in there, and it was a very diverse group of moms, and everyone in there was talking about how they were in therapy. And I think
Oh,
being in community and being with a group of women who weren't afraid to say they were struggling and that they had their own challenges and struggles helped it feel safe enough for me to say, tell me more.
yeah.
Who are you seeing? Who are you talking to? It took maybe about 3, 4 years though before I felt safe enough to
Mm-hmm.
actually make that phone call. But even when my friend gave me the number of her therapist, it took me another month before I reached out to her
Mm-hmm.
and then another month to actually schedule the appointment, right? And so
Yeah.
there were so many blocks that I experienced that finally like made it feel safe enough, but I'm so grateful that I did that work and that I showed
Mm-hmm.
up and that I figured out how to like even pay for it because then that was another challenge. How am I paying for
Yeah.
this? I don't have the money for this, but
Right.
I knew that there was this disconnect. I didn't have language for it, right? I didn't know it was
Mm.
called disassociation. I didn't know I had experienced trauma. I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
know I didn't know that the financial trauma of losing, becoming unhoused, losing my home, all my possessions, like how
Yeah.
that impacts you. And it wasn't until I sat across from a professional that helped me gain some language where I had this aha moment and it
Yeah.
completely shifted my life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that's beautiful that you actually made that move. And like, even though it took a little bit to get there, it's putting down those barriers that we're kind of used to having up because of how we grew up with. That's such an interesting story of going into the church, a different church, right? Because where they normalize speaking about therapy. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard like therapy mentioned in the church that I grew up with.
Yeah, no,
I wonder if it makes me think like I wonder if it's part of because they want you to be like so like I get it like spiritually aligned that that's your therapy, but it's like different, you know? I don't know.
yeah, I think it's both and. As someone who
Yeah,
is, who is a part like where faith is so
right.
important to me. I think it's both and. I think
Yeah.
there's a spiritual aspect where I can heal, and then there's also like tangible real life
Yeah.
experts who have wisdom and knowledge and insight that they can share with me and help me better
Right.
understand my story.
Right. Yeah,
It,
exactly. And putting those like words to it. Like you said,
yes,
like disassociation. Like you're like I don't know what that is. Like what you're experiencing, putting a word to it makes it now like, oh, that's actually something that people get. It's not like why am I the only one going through this? It's like, oh, this is actually something that people go through, you know? Like
yeah. And
that's
then
the biggest
actually,
thing.
and then actually giving me the tools and the strategies and how to like
Yeah.
not disassociate, right? Which
Right.
that work was painful. That was like it took such intentionality. Like, and if I didn't practice it, if I didn't practice connecting with myself all week, she'd
Yeah.
make me do it right there. And she'd be like, okay, then let's take a moment to pause. What are you feeling right now? And I would have to take the tools she taught me and implement them right there. What's coming to mind? And there were so many parts internally in my brain where I'm like, Jasmine, you feel so dumb right now. Like this is
Oh.
why why are you doing this? And then
Yeah.
the other part of me was like, trust the process. The
Mm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna see what you're hoping to see if you do the work and you stay consistent in it. And that was, yeah. And I stayed consistent. I kid you not, like session number 4. I don't think people talk about this enough in therapy, but session number 4, I was trying to find all the reasons why this was not
Like
working.
excuses, right? Like making
Yes.
excuses for it. Yeah,
So then,
yeah.
so then I was gonna tell her at the end of the session,
Oh
this
no.
is not working out. she called me out on it before
Oh,
I even said anything. And she's like, so how is how you're feeling impacting our time together?
oh.
And I was
I was
like,
like,
how'd you how'd you know that?
yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I'm so grateful for her, right? She wasn't perfect by any means, but she helped
Yeah.
really catapult me, put me on a path towards deep intentional healing. And I'm really grateful for her insight and her wisdoms and the ways that she was able to help me just begin my healing journey, but also to just gain language around my story and the things that I had experienced throughout my entire
Yeah.
life.
No, yeah, I love that. Give me a little crash course. Give us a little tip for not disassociating and being present for
Yeah.
for
So
those that might need it.
you're like,
Uh,
um,
Let me get my
so
notepad out. Hold on. No, I'm just kidding.
So, well, yeah, so there's some steps. So for me, it's step number one is just taking some moments to deep breathe. Then it's saying, okay, I'm having some feelings or some emotions. What am I feeling? And then if I don't know what I'm feeling, right, there's a tool called a feelings wheel that can help us gain some language.
Mm,
So I'm feeling vulnerable or exposed, right? Well, why am I feeling that? Is there a lie or a limiting belief that I believe about myself out of this experience or situation, right? So
mm-hmm,
the failure to succeed, I believe I'm never going to succeed, is a lie that
mm,
I had to confront, but I didn't know it until I named it and I gave myself permission to say it out loud. Then
mm.
that's when it's like, okay, now that I know what the limiting belief or the lie is, I can now do the work to create new neural pathways in my brain by doing truths, right? I have the capacity to learn. I have the capacity to succeed. There are an unlimited amount of ways that I can earn income and financially thrive. And here's how I can do it. And I would do that work. I also was big into essential oils. And so I
Mm-hmm.
would like inhale my essential oils and say this truth, like I have the capacity to heal. I have the
Oh
capacity, my
yeah.
brain has the capacity to heal. I do not
Mm,
need to operate out of these negative mindsets that I have been living out of. It's not too late for me to heal. And I would do it every single day, over and over again. I would journal it as well every single day. Here are some lies that I believe. But I think the biggest thing is just giving yourself the permission to actually name
yeah.
it. What
Right.
is the lie or the limiting belief that you believe? And give
Yeah.
yourself permission to say it out loud or write it down. Because finally, when we can give space for it, is when then you're like, okay, what's the solution? How can I heal through this? And that's what our brain's created to do. Our brain is created to come up with solutions for the barriers and challenges we face.
Mm-hmm. There you
So
go.
when we don't approach it with curiosity and we don't let our brain do that, we're withholding it the opportunity to heal. We're withholding it the
Wow.
opportunity to come with new solutions.
Yeah, she'll be invoicing us later, by the way. No, but that's a perfect perfectly said, and it's also a perfect way to kind of segue into healthcare and like and just the costs behind that because I mean therapy is just not I mean it's not cheap, right? Like and especially if you keep going back, I'm sure. So I mean, how did you find like resources or did you look for any resources or bring that barrier down as well where you're like, well, I gotta get it done though.
Yeah, so I was uninsured for 5.5 years.
Mm,
And so I had to navigate the healthcare system as someone who was uninsured, low income as well. And so I found a lot of resources. Local hospitals have what's called financial assistance or charity care programs that are based on income. So, I Googled a few different local hospitals in my area to see what their requirements were based on income. And
mm,
noticed that up to the 200% of the federal income line, another thing to consider is that every state has different rules and policies around what is considered low income based on how many people are in your home. So
right.
for me, it's a family of five. So my income for a family of five made me low income, but in a single individual, if we had the same income, they would not be considered low income, right? So it's dependent on where you live and how many people live in your home context. And so I was able to find and get some financial assistance. At one point, I got 100% covered for
Okay.
anything I needed, right? So in case there was a medical emergency, I could go to that
Mm-hmm.
hospital, get services, and know that I was going to be medically covered for 100%. And then there's something called, nonprofit healthcare clinics. Um, and they do what's called sliding scale care. And
Okay.
so I was able to get like a PCP that way and be able
Oh.
to, I paid $20 to get seen, and it included the visit and the blood work, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then for mental health services, a lot of therapists sometimes offer what's called self-pay or a sliding scale service.
Right.
And so I would just, reach out and I'm like, hey, I would love therapy services. I'm uninsured. Like, do you offer a self-pay or a sliding scale price point? And they would say, yes, I do. And I have the capacity to take on another client at this price point, or no, I'm at capacity, or no, I don't offer this. And then I got to make an informed choice around how I could budget it in, right? And
Yeah.
so everyone, I did therapy, my husband's done therapy, my kids have done therapy now. And so we utilize different resources like that. Also, some faith communities offer
Mm.
like benevolence or like financial assistance well for therapy or different services. So if you are a part of a faith context and space, you can see what your community offers. And then there's programs too that exist in the
Yeah.
nonprofit space. So really getting connected to your local nonprofits and finding out what resources may be available. Like for us at the Firehouse Dream, we provide 12 free sessions
Oh, okay.
for our youth, our young adults, who, because we know, for example, we know how broken the Medicaid system is, right? Through my own
Mm-hmm.
experience, my kids have Medicaid, and I know the wait to get mental health care on Medicaid is 6 months to a year.
Wow.
As a nonprofit, the work we're trying to do is preventative, not waiting for our youth to be in crisis. So if our
Yeah.
youth have Medicaid, but they're on a wait list for 6 months, then let us be an interim option where we partner with private practice therapists who
Mm.
offer a reduced scale fee, and we pay for the first 12 services. And then hopefully after the 12 services, they're either they're off of their wait list, or they can maintain the reduced fee with a therapist that we've connected them to. So we're just a payer
Wow.
of that. We don't handle the mental health services per se, but we've
Yeah.
built really strong partnerships. And I'm not the only nonprofit who does that. There's tons of nonprofits who provide mental health services in that kind of way, where they have in-house mental health care that they provide. So tap into your local nonprofits and see what resources are available. So those are a
Mm.
few tips of how I've navigated the healthcare system when I've needed MRIs or ultrasounds. There's also what's called um, freestanding like unit places, and their prices are typically a lot more cheaper and affordable, especially if you're self pay.
Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting. Is that just so that's just like a dedicated place just for imaging?
Yep, just for imaging. Yeah. And so
Oh.
we have one in Illinois. When I was living there, we actually just moved to Nevada, but when I was living in Illinois, there was some freestanding imaging spaces. And so when I needed like an ultrasound or an annual MRI, my PCP would just write the referral to that freestanding place, and then I would pay out of pocket,
Mm.
which it was like $150 when
Wow. That's
yeah,
huge. Are you kidding
I
me?
know.
People that are like even if with insurance, you're paying like
Hundreds.
potentially thousand like dollars. Like
Yeah,
the healthcare system is just insane.
I know. I have health insurance now. I just got it 9 months ago, and I pay more now
Mm-hmm.
than I ever have paid
Yeah.
for health insurance, but I need it because I have a medically complex kiddo who
Yeah.
needs a lot of services, and in moving to a new state, we weren't going to qualify for Medicaid here, so I needed to figure out how
Uh,
to raise my income and get insurance. So I've learned a lot about the process. It's very broken, but if you're someone who is uninsured and the cost of health insurance is too much, just know there's options for you, and you can still get the care you need. And more than likely, you'll spend less than what you'll actually be paying through the actual health insurance.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And just keeping like just from my own experience with helping like my mom just go through some of these programs too, is just like keep poking at it. Like keep submitting, your documentation. Like just because they said like you can't, qualify for this, it doesn't mean that you can't qualify for like another program. Or some hospitals will actually, like, if you reach out to them and be like, I can't like pay this bill, they'll be like, okay, well, we'll like bring it down to this much. Like, what can you pay? That's another, like, I think a technique I've learned is just kind of like the negotiation, like,
Yeah.
technique with like bills. And that goes for anyone, because even if you're like insured, some of these bills are crazy.
It's insane. Yeah, it's definitely a broken system, but just know that there is a whole community of organizations and healthcare clinics who care about the uninsured, whether
Mm-hmm.
documented or not, and
Mm-hmm.
the underinsured as well. And so there are options for, because I have a high deductible health plan, and so that's considered underinsured. So there's still programs even for those of us who
Mm.
are underinsured where we can still get some support as well if using the HSA option is not something we want to do.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And how do you go in like navigating through all these like healthcare challenges as well, like in your life, maybe even to this day? How can someone like advocate for themselves in a healthcare setting, like especially if they're uninsured or if like they're worried about the costs? What's like a tip or technique or that you use to just advocate for yourself? Like,
Man, I think I think a lot of healthcare um medical teams and doctors and staff get away with poor care
yeah.
because no one is actually filing the complaints. So
Mm.
you if you are experiencing, discrimination or not the kind of care that you think you should be handling, like do what you can to like file a formal complaint because we're not going to create change if all we're doing is internalizing the experiences and just sharing them amongst each other but not actually confronting the institution that is
Mm.
problematic to begin with, right?
Yeah, holding them liable.
Holding them accountable, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's not saying like I'm looking to get this doctor fired, but hey, like have you done some cultural competency or compassionate training recently? Like, do you know how to work with diverse populations? Like,
Yeah. And a lot of these doctors, like, they need that wake up call because they just go through for the motions, like getting their money, just doing the procedures. And, like, I don't know, it just, there's been such a, especially in, like, the community, like, in the, like, the, like, people of color going to see a doctor is tough because they don't understand their needs. So you expect a doctor to be more compassionate and maybe like they just going through the motions. They just want to get you in and out. Like,
yeah.
no, hold them accountable. Like,
I also bring like my husband with me because sometimes I just yeah, it's a typically it's been an unsafe space, right? I've had some
mm-hmm.
horrible medical experiences
Yeah.
where a white male doctor said I didn't realize it, that was part of my healing journey part, but
Yeah.
he said something really inappropriate that I should have like filed a
Wow.
complaint and I didn't because I didn't realize like how discriminatory what it was that he said
Wow.
towards me. And so I sometimes I bring my husband with me to appointments, but then it's also backfired because then
Mm.
they'll look at him and be like, "Are you safe at home?" Because then they'll make the assumption that if my husband's with me, it's because I'm experiencing DV or domestic violence.
Oh,
Yeah, and
interesting.
I've had to
But
learn
like
how
that's
to
my husband. It's just like
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like,
I've
okay.
had to learn how to advocate and say, no, he's here because I've asked him to be here because
Yeah.
I need another person to help me advocate because I've been dismissed so many
Yeah.
times. Um,
Right.
so that's another thing is like when you're advocating, if you need to be like you say, I brought this person here because I need help being advocated for and not being dismissed for my concerns. And then that's
Yes.
when they'll kind of like flip the
Mm.
script a little bit, right? And humanize us a little bit more. But I think it's definitely a challenge. I think there are lots of amazing doctors who deeply care
Yep.
for our
Mm-hmm.
communities. But then I also think there's a group who just have not done the work and then
Mm-hmm.
they've projected their assumptions and stereotypes on us. And it creates bias and it creates discriminatory care, and we need to be able to call
Yeah.
it out for what it is.
Yeah, and that's a just a, it's such a huge issue, and I think it's just such a big topic as well. It's just, you could make a whole episode on just like healthcare, um, like misrepresentation, and just in the Latino community and just people of color as well, and just it's it's such a huge topic. But like I said, back to like advocating for yourself, holding the physicians like accountable and just institutions in general, especially for like doctors, like even just like a review goes such a long. They care, like they won't tell you this, but they care so much about their reviews that like it will go a long way. Like it will. Um,
Or it's also knowing you have the right to fire your doctor. So
yeah.
if that doctor doesn't work, then get a different one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then I have also asked like at the health clinic, because I had a situation where I was treated poorly by a doctor at that health clinic and I had to file a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm looking for a doctor who's going to listen. I'm looking for a doctor who's not going to make assumptions about my age because I look young and then treat me like I'm not smart or that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Wow. Yeah.
And and then the people at the front desk, like they know things too, right? Like
Yeah.
they know who's good and compassionate. So I'm like, who do you
Mm-hmm.
recommend? Who can I get connected to that's going to give me quality care, because I know that that's what this institution values. So connect me with the doctor who's going to listen to me and actually help me get answers for what I'm experiencing in my symptoms. And they'll
Mm-hmm.
do it.
Yeah.
They'll do
Yeah,
it.
that's a good tip because a lot of they know, like I was saying, they know who they're working for. Like I've seen a lot of like TikTok videos too, just being like, "You shouldn't go see this doctor." By the way, like I work for them, and they're like this is what he does, and they be posting like videos. I don't know, like social media has made a positive in that aspect.
Yes, awareness, awareness. But
Mm-hmm.
and that's good. But also like there is so much power in and I'm not saying don't be a Karen, right? Like
Yeah,
don't
but
be filing complaints against everybody. But like if there's
yeah, but
actual
advocate for
evidence,
yourself.
yeah, if there's actual evidence of
Mm-hmm.
discriminatory practices and language being used towards you, report them. It, it's the only way that change is going to happen internally on their end, and we need to be able to speak up. And as Latinos, we're like, oh, I feel bad.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to get them in trouble. But honestly, we're not going to see the kind of systems change we want until we're like, no, how you spoke to me and how you treated me
Yeah.
was okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's it's well said, and it all just comes back to advocating for yourself, holding them like accountable, and that also helps you just in life in general, where you're just like maybe I should start doing that in all like like all these other aspects of my life, like at work and like maybe like holding people accountable is it's so big. How do you think that in general, like how does like systemic issues like financial stability and you're kind of like circling it all, putting it all together, right? Financial stability and lack of access to like healthcare. How does that impact like mental health, especially in the like Latino and like immigrant community?
Yeah, so there's a big fancy word in the public health space. It's called
Give it
social
to us.
determinants of health.
Say it again.
Social determinants of health.
Oh, okay, fancy. Go on.
Yeah, it's a big fancy word, right? And basically what it means is there's all these different um categories that impacts one's opportunity to succeed or thrive. That could be the community you live in. That could be the kind of education and access to education. It could mean access to healthier food options, right? If you live in a food desert or food apartheid, like that's going to impact the kind of food you get access to.
Right.
How many people are living in the home? Economics, money, household income is a major impactor of social determinants of health. And so it's all interconnected. It's
Right.
holistic, right? And so when we think about how it impacts the Latino community and population, there's generational work I think we need to do, right? In
Mm.
terms of healing. But then I also think there's a lot of beauty around who we are and what we have to offer, and the pressure to assimilate. I would say do the work to figure out how to do the both and, right? Because we're very communal. community. We share resources. We are very
Mm-hmm.
resilient people. We find resources and share them amongst each other. We're not so individualized, right? We share, right? I think of tandas as an example for
Right.
natural resources, where we pool our dollars together as a way to help each other out. There are so many cultural practices that we have that leans into holistic healing and thriving and success. And so my curiosity is what does it look like for us to reconnect into all those parts of who we are, while also fully acknowledging the very real present systemic and institutional
Right.
challenges that exists and impacts our communities. And so holding space for the both and in it, while also saying, how can I experience healing in this kind of way, right? Because healing to me, talk therapy is a way we can experience healing, but it's not the only way we heal, especially as
Mm-hmm.
Latinos, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when I think of healing, I think about the times I came together with my families and friends over food, right? Potluck, where
Yeah.
everyone's like, hi, everyone's like, hugs and kisses, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just sitting around a table sharing stories and we're laughing. That's healing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Storytelling is it's an indigenous practice that goes back from generations to generations as we sit in circle to share stories. That's healing. Sharing dollars and meeting resources and the needs of each other, that's healing. When we create art and murals, right? Like I wear my name tag as a reminder that this is a form of resistance in my name
Oh, I love
grown
that.
and seen, right? Like that's the whole reason why it was created. That is healing. And so when I think about the very real social determinants of health that exist, they're real. I sit in that tension and then I think about it through the cultural nuance of our stories and practices and lived experiences and say, okay, if these barriers are here and they're very real, how can I tap into these practices to help me experience healing and success and thriving in a way that, systemically won't I won't allow it to hold me back, because I'm going to do everything I can to heal so that I can succeed and thrive in this life as well.
Mic drop. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jasmine, for coming on here and just sharing all these dimes, all these gems. That I know I learned so much, and I know the audience is gonna like just love this episode, and they can. There's a little bit of everything for everyone here that we kind of went through. So, where can people connect with you? Where can they reach you? Where can they find Mentally Mutual if they want to learn more, and then the nonprofit? Yeah, just give it to us.
Yes, I'm the most present on Instagram. So you can follow me personally. Your friend Jasmine. There's a dot after friend. And then Mentally Mutual, just the at Mentally Mutual, and then at the Firehouse Dream, and you'll find us there.
Awesome, love it. And are you working on any upcoming projects or anything like that? You working on any certification, any new ones, or anything like that that we can look forward to
Well,
you be
I
adding to
just
your name? Because I know you're always busy on your Instagram
uh,
stories.
so I just completed the accredited financial counselor and then now the certified immigrant professional. That one I have to take the test or the assessment on that one
Hmm.
still. I'm doing an MBA one on
Oh
the
my gosh.
restorative economy. So lots of cohorts. I think I'm gonna take some time to pause and rest.
Yeah, sounds like you got a lot going on.
for the Once those are done in like June, I'm gonna pause and rest for the rest of the year. And then there's some. I love learning. I love being a
Hmm.
student learning, and so we'll see what new opportunities come. But right now, I'm gonna rest and just continue to connect with my community and share the resources and facilitate workshops and teach my community everything that I've learned about money, mental well-being, and how they too can build a thriving life.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I wish you luck. I know that you don't need it because you're such a go-getter, and like you'll succeed in everything that you put your mind up to. Just from knowing your mindset and all the work that you've done, you've already done it. It's just now kind of going through the formal processes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast and to hold space and for me to share story with you.